ask for that in our current circumstances, that is what they're asking for. If they're asking for the unweighted, let's take a look, big picture. Once again, trying to be able to compare across the very unique GPA systems across districts.
We had some discussion of maybe we should use a 100-point scale on there, but we're going to stick with the
Yes, ma'am.
the 5-point.
Yeah, we can convert it, and in fact, depending on what someone asks for on a scholarship application or so forth, the way our computer system calculates it right now, we could log in and we could give you a number, or we could give you a out of the 5.0, 4.0 scale, etc. Okay. You're welcome.
And that difference is noted on the transcript itself, that this is on one scale and this is on another scale.
So we would only include their ranked GPA on their transcript.
Okay.
And so you would only see that on the transcript.
Okay. This would be a separate document that's provided.
It would be a separate document, provided if needed. And perhaps we were overzealous in making it convenient for the counseling departments, I'll be honest, because that's really where a lot of this conversation came from is, we get asked about that. It would be really great if we could put that on there. And we'll just continue our current practice and provide it when needed. Okay. All right. So then as far as our implementation timeline, this is an action item during tonight's board meeting. And then we have some draft communications prepared. I've given you a printed copy if anybody between workshop and the board meeting wants to get out your red pens and get after it. It's there for you to take a look at it and provide additional feedback if you would choose to do so. This English teacher relishes in feedback, or former English teacher, I should say. And then we will send that communication out tomorrow. Once again, families would have until June 9th to make any changes to course requests. I would foresee that really Spanish in 8th grade would be the point of conversation, potentially in the household of a current 7th grader. Are we ready to go ahead and take it in 7th or 8th grade, or do we want to push that back? But the other high school credit courses, since they will not be, we'll continue our current practice. I don't foresee a whole lot of changes there. However, we would allow someone to go ahead and request that change should that be their desire through June 9th, which allows us time to make sure the master schedule is good to go so that we'll have schedules ready in August. Additionally, as our current course catalog is representative or an outcropping of our current GPA policy, we will, for this class of 2027 and beyond, be working on revising their course guides to match and to clearly communicate how this policy plays into their course selection and which courses have which weight and so forth. And so we've had some additional conversations since April that I will share. We debated on whether we wanted that to be an addendum, if you will, to the current course catalog. And for clarity, we're starting fresh. This group of 7th graders will have their own. So for a little while, we'll have 2 course guidebooks running through high school as this transitions on the way up, to make sure that depending on what grade your student is in, you know exactly what courses are available and so forth and how that plays into GPA. This also, through the course of next year, we will work with our student information system to make sure that are all set, that by the end of that freshman year when we do our first calculation, we're good to go for people to be able to see that first run of that class rank. And once again, this group of kiddos would begin in August of 2023, and we would see the first cohort of graduates in May of 2027, 5 years from now. So,
remind me real quickly what you said about we're addressing the kids who may have already signed up for CBEs, or ones. Are there any that had already taken high school CBEs?
So there might be a handful.
A very small number. We were going to contact them directly.
Okay, and so Molly, I can say it louder so it's on the recording, that they will contact those families directly about that. The students who are signed up for this summer, once again, will have that opportunity to make a choice about whether they accept the grade and the credit or decide not to, depending on the context of what that is. And Molly, forgive me if I'm misspeaking, but if they took a high school credit before this year, that is from from a, I can't even, my acronyms are all mixed up in my head, from a CBE, that would speak to the grandfathering of, at this point, we're starting their GPA calculation as we move forward. Does that make sense? Okay. Alrighty. All right. Are there any additional points of clarification I can provide? Mm-hmm.
So back to what you were just talking about, the CBEs, kids taking them early. I mean, that we're talking about that would just be on their transcript because that most likely would not be one of their courses on their weighted GPA because they would have more than 4.
So when students
More than 4
choose to take a
years.
credit by exam, it is generally because
Right.
they are advanced academically and want to accelerate.
Right.
Therefore, yes, by the end of their high school careers, they're probably a student in the category who may have 10 semesters of science from which to choose, or 12
Right.
semesters instead. And so that CBE, which would be a tier 3 course, would not negatively impact their GPA. If anything, it opened the gateway for them to have other opportunities to take
Right.
other science or math courses, since those are primarily our 2 areas where students accelerate through CBEs.
Okay. Thank you.
I would just say on your letter,
Mhm.
if you could bold, underline, highlight, glow the June 9th deadline.
I can totally do that. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I agree. I will say, I hope these people, this is pretty tiny is one day,
Well,
I don't know.
When it's on the screen, you can blow
Okay,
it up.
it's on-
Yes, and I was trying to get it to print on one page.
On
So
one
yes,
page.
ma'am, duly noted. I'll make sure it's really big, and attached as well in case the graphic doesn't show up.
Got it. Yeah.
Yes.
And then my only comment,
I think he got them mixed up with his own, but we're good. Anyway,
my only other comment is I just am thankful for, again, in this last month, the folks who have spoken up and asked questions. That's part of the process, right? We wanted to get this out there and people to, work with it and try to figure out, what we may need to think about. And I also thanks to the district for, listening and making those adjustments as needed. And not really to the policy, but to the procedure part of it. And I guess the other comment, I mean, there will be more of that. I mean, people should know. I would expect there will be more. We've thought through so many things, but with any major change like this, there will be other things we find out along the way. But I know you guys will adapt and address them as necessary. So, thanks.
All right.
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That will bring us to item 2, consideration and discussion related to the 2022-23 budget development. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Orack and board members. With an update of how we're tracking in 21-22 and with some initial projections and other variables that we take into account for the 22-23 budget is our CFO, Ms. Amy Droz.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, thank you.
There we go. Sorry, just took me a second there. Can't see that far. I know the feeling. I might have to. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here again tonight to talk about some preliminary information with regard to our upcoming fiscal year budget. That's for 22-23. So just quickly what we're going to cover tonight, as always, we're going to give you an update on our current year, the general fund, and where I am anticipating that we will end up as that kind of becomes our new base. We're going to look at some preliminary information again for next year. That's updated enrollment and property values, revenue and expenditure projections, and start looking at some preliminary compensation information, that being just some core and base information that's going to be very vital as we move forward in those conversations in the coming weeks and months. Again, our overall timeline and where we're at with that. And then at the very end is historical data that we've gone over previously, just for your reference as you're looking through this. If you need some background information, that will be there. So first of all, we've talked a lot about this current year and what they call the target percentage attendance rate. That was implemented by TEA to help districts in periods 1 through 4, particularly 1 and 4, when our attendance rates due to the pandemic were very low across the state. And College Station, we did benefit from this. So this schedule actually is updated, so we now know where period 5 is. Of course, we haven't reviewed and audited those, but should be very close. So we're only estimating period 6 at this point for our attendance percentages. So right now, I think that with this hold harmless provision, will be somewhere around 13,270 average daily attendance. And we originally budgeted last August 13,160. So we'll be 100 to 110, and my estimates better than we originally budgeted. So we're very grateful for this provision that they put in place. So looking at our revenue estimates using that hold harmless provision, so we adopted, or you adopted, 124.7 million of revenue less recapture, because I relate that directly to our property taxes and state revenue. I feel like we're going to come in at 126.4, or a little better than that. So 1.7 million above where we estimated originally. So, and remember, that does not include anything with regard to our hail and roof claims. So we did have some insurance proceeds there. And then looking forward to the expenditures, looking at the bottom line, I think we're going to come out at about 1.5 million, where appropriations exceed revenues instead of the 2.9 that we adopted. Again, then we have the winter storm damage, and those numbers are still tracking at about $1.4 million due to our deductibles, unrecoverable depreciation, and that sort. But when you take this extraordinary loss with our operating loss, it's right at the 2.9 that we originally adopted. So we'll wait and see how that ends up finally, and we'll keep updating it. So what does this do to our fund balance? Because as we've said before, part of our financial rating is looking at our fund balance and ensuring that in the undesignated or unassigned part that we have 75 days of operating expenditures or cash flow. So looking at that, you can see the last 2 years, or a couple years, that we have dipped into fund balance. We're very grateful that it's there. It's there for a number of reasons, and some is to get through some of these hard times. But when we get through to August 31, 2022, with the anticipated loss, both with the insurance and regular, looking at around 31.8 total. In this particular schedule, I did go ahead and move some of the committed to unassigned to meet that 75-day requirement, but that's certainly well within that time span. So, but we are inching down each year. So we'll keep a very close eye on that as we look at the next year's budget.
Amy, the 75 days is utilized in the financial integrity, the rating system, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So now moving forward to 22-23. So we did receive some updated demographic information or projections for our enrollment. So in the fall, the demographer estimated our enrollment for 22-23 to be at 14,594. So since then, our enrollment has continued to grow. That's the other thing that's helped our current year. It's continued to increase throughout the year. So he reassessed that based on the current enrollment information we gave him at the time, and now he's predicting 14,689. Our enrollment as of yesterday was 14,335. Still slightly higher than a month ago when I reported it to you. So growth is, of course, slowing down. We're at the end of the year, but we are continuing to see an increase in enrollment. So that 14,689, I like to compare it to, sorry, one too many slides, to Snapshot, because that is a constant. That's every year. TEA reports that, so it's something for us to mark, and it's not a moving target depending on where that they look at. So then we have to look at our property value growth. Now, on around May 1st, we received what's called the preliminary property values from our appraisal district here locally. They go in and estimate then what they feel like might be protested by our taxpayers and their values and what we may lose. They're continuing to still find some properties that need to go on there, but 11.5% growth is very realistic based on the data that they gave us. So that's what we're going to use in our estimates. And you can see there, 2017 was the last time we had growth of this kind of magnitude. School finance was very different then, so I wasn't here, but they remind me back in 2017 when they grew like that, our recapture payments went way up.
Over 5 million. I don't know why I remember that.
I don't know
but
why you remember that number. Now, with the new law, as they grow this, our recapture payments don't increase, but our tax rate has to be compressed down. So that's
So,
the effect of that.
Amy,
growth.
regardless of the property value growth, we'll only recognize 2.5% on
Around
the revenue
2.5%.
side. And at
Correct.
that time, the M&O rate starts getting compressed down to limit how much revenue we recognize.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So I will remind you of that additional homestead exemption that was on the ballot. This growth does not include that additional homestead. They did not have that in their software at the time, but also by not putting it in there, it's very relative because I'm comparing to similar values for the prior year and similar rules. So that's
But
not included.
For our purposes, that 15,000 homestead exemption probably doesn't make much of a difference when it comes to revenue because we have that 2.5% cap.
It does make some differences, but we are going to be held harmless to that. So our hold harmless right now is estimated at a few $100,000, two to
Okay.
300,000. So we do have some loss in value there, but they will hold us harmless. The state will make up that difference for school districts. So at that 11.5%, the question is how much are we going to have to compress our tax rate? So we're still waiting on finals, but the estimates TEA and the comptroller have provided previously have been very accurate. So at 11.5%, currently College Station ISD's M&O tax rate is at 95.22 cents. I'm estimating that it would go down 5.8 cents or just shy of 6, and that's only if it stays at 11.5. If it ends up a little higher, it will be a little higher than that 5.8. So 89.41 cents. If we hold the INS, the debt rate at the 26.3, we're looking at a total tax rate of $1.1571 compared to $1.2152. So, and all of this now does include that additional homestead exemption, all of the calculations that I've made here. Questions?
I mean, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but just, putting that in bigger perspective, obviously it's, the legislature passed it so that people could have some tax relief,
Some tax
right?
relief, correct.
But we're talking about when they're limiting us to a 2.5% tax or growth, right? Really,
Basically.
that's happening in a time where, I mean, it makes me where we can't raise our expenses more than 2.5% then, which is teacher salaries, is all the inflation things that are going on right now, right? That are much more than 2.5%.
Correct.
I just make sure I'm understanding that all correctly.
You are
right?
understanding, and it can even be further complicated by relative to our student growth. Fortunately, with this student growth, the recapture will not set in. But if we had a lower student growth compared to that, property values and recapture could even set in. But we're fortunate to have the student growth that we do. So looking at the total tax rate over the past 5 years, you can see that we have gone down 18 cents. And that's our current rate. This does not include the almost 6 cents that I am expecting us to decline this year due to compression. So almost 18 cents in 5 years. Pretty phenomenal. So now looking at the assumptions that we used in producing the revenue and expenditures that you're going to see in a minute. We talked about that 3.5% enrollment growth based on snapshot. That's that 14,689 for enrollment. That equates to right at 13,600 for our average daily attendance. And then, of course, an even higher, what we call weighted average daily attendance. And this is for those special populations that we get additional weights for. And then the property tax growth of 11.5% at that. For the general fund, 89.41 cents is what we're going to utilize in the calculations next. So estimating out the revenue through the funding formulas that we have, holding our miscellaneous revenue, interest, earnings, extracurricular, and other the same. Looking at state revenue, we will pick up some additional fast growth allotment that has already been calculated for the year. So that's at 686,000 compared to about 350 last year. And taking our federal programs down a little bit. Some of that is the dependence on ESSER, the indirect cost. So looking at 130.18 million. That's up from the budgeted revenue, not ended actual, of about $5.4 million. And you look at that with no recapture. Looking forward to the appropriations, our appropriations last year were 127.6 million. And we've looked at a few things that we need to add back into this budget. Some positions for special education as that program has grown. Inflation is mainly the other areas in fuel, property and casualty, and some other contracts that we have. So really keeping those to a minimum. But when we apply that to our estimated revenue, we have about $1.3 million of revenue in excess of appropriation. So we're in a positive situation before we look at compensation of about 1.3 million. Yes.
For the special education,
Mhm.
my understanding is that we're getting a lot of influx because people want to bring their special needs children here. And I think it says a lot about the district. But is there not any kind of federal fund or state fund or accommodation for that?
Well, first of all, that we get some of the weights for those particular students and in attendance in the services that they're provided. So that is calculated a little bit higher in our weighted average daily attendance, which is what we're funded on. We also do get federal monies, and we just got our appropriations, which really, compared to our growth, it doesn't seem like it went up very much. I think I was told it went up about 50,000. But it's based on populations, I think it's of the last December. Is that correct? So we do have some federal monies as well, in addition to that is not reported here.
And yeah, I think it's great to say that that's a draw for people coming to our district. It shows a lot of the effort of the teachers, and especially the SPED department.
So looking to that preliminary compensation information, so we do contract with TASB to review our salaries in comparison to our peer groups. So this is a summary of some of their findings that we got a preliminary report on. They compared our teacher groups to 11 market peer districts. In that group, they look at pay ranges of 0, 5, 10, and 15. So our 5, 10, and 15-year teacher salaries were at 91% of our peer market, and we were at 94% of that market for the 20-year. Beginning teacher pay was at 93% of market. On average, College Station ISD does have more experienced teachers than in other districts, so that's a positive. 51% of our teachers have more than 10 years of experience. And the last statistic that we have is last year, there was, out of 129 total teachers, we hired 135, of which 54 were new to the profession. So that's why that beginning teacher pay is so important.
On this report, does it take into account our growth or attrition relative to other schools that may pay, say, 95 or 96% of the market? And then correlated to that question is, does it take into account the pay versus the student-teacher ratios and the special accommodations?
No, this particular market really looks at the proximity to College Station ISD, who we might be competing with to hire the teachers. So it's proximity and district size both. They're looking at a combination of both of those.
I would say that's like Fuji apples versus Golden Delicious, because there's a lot more than just compensation for why teachers stay at a district or why people bring their children to a district. Are there reports out there that show the student ratios, the spend on special programs?
You can pull the student to teacher ratio, student to staff ratio, those types of things off your taper reports. However, they lag a year or so behind, but that information is readily available on TEA's website. What Amy is referencing here through TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards, it's simply a salary study.
Okay.
So it is dollars to dollars, just relative to pay. So our comparison group of 11 market peers is relative to distance, but it's also got some districts that are farther away, that are two comprehensive high school districts with similar size overall enrollment. So there's several different in there. I believe Georgetown is in there, but at the same time, I believe Magnolia, Montgomery, but then we have Bryan, Navasota, Caldwell. So there's kind of a range of folks in those peer districts, those that we would compete with locally, but also other districts that may be a little farther away that are similar size to us. We have modified that peer group. Just, I think maybe we added Huntsville a while back or something like that, but it stayed relatively consistent. I think the message here is that just simply we're behind our peer market that we compare ourselves to. And yes, there are other variables, Mr. Decker, ratios and those types of things that one could look at. This does not take that into consideration. This is strictly teacher pay schedule.
Because I think that's the challenge we have versus the private market. As discussed with the tax rate, we can't raise our revenue. And so it's a different competitive environment. I think we need to, and y'all are doing a great job about competing, and especially as we get into the Holdsworth, about getting recruiting and retention and recognizing the excellence of the teachers. I mean, just look at the catch up from COVID. But I think it's not just a single issue. I'm not a teacher, but as an employer, it's not just salary. It's also the conditions that bring people here.
Mr. Martineau, just to clarify, when it says, or Strauss, when it says pay, does that take into account other benefits, insurance, and so
No,
forth?
this is
Simply
just base pay.
salary schedule.
Just base
So that's a variable. Each district may contribute a little bit differently for healthcare and those types of things.
Because answering my own question, I do know that those 100% or the ones that are over median are also districts with high attrition rates. So that should tell you something about they're trying to buy talent.
But I think, I was going to say, it's important questions to ask, though, because I mean, we all basically get the same money per student, right? I mean, a lot of changes a little bit, but so the question is, why are we at I mean, a reasonable question is, why are we at 95% of other districts? I mean, and some of it has to be some ratios and pieces in there. Some of it is the experienced teachers, right? And that right? But I think we have to understand that as we try to catch up and try to be more on par with some of those other school districts.
Yeah, we can probably get that into more detail on the next couple times. So as far as the administrative professional area, they look at that peer group, but they also look at some statewide data for districts of similar size. So for central administration, our midpoint of our salary, our pay scale is 3% below the market. For campus administration, it's 4% below. And for other professional is 3% below, and we have listed some examples there for you of what positions are in the professional pay structure. As far as paraprofessionals, they expanded even further and looking at non-school sources and the greater Houston metro area. It's interesting enough that our pay structure, we're at 100% for the minimum and midpoints, but we're at 93% of market on average pay, which means that we have more newer employees than some of those peers that we compared to. And then for the paraprofessional and instructional support, similar. Midpoint's at 100% of market, but the minimums are 94%, and we're only at 91% of market value. So what TASB is recommending is that we need to start looking at some of the starting pay for those instructional support staff within our district. And the last group is the auxiliary group, again looking at the greater Houston area and employers other than school districts. Very good on our midpoints. We're at 99% of market. But they did recognize that in our auxiliary group, I think it's something we already know, that we need to focus on custodial, food service, and transportation. That those are some areas that school districts across the state have struggled in. But they also did recognize that in transportation that we made some considerable progress this year when you all as a board approved that mid-year recruiting and retention plan that we put into place. So we've made some gains there, not where we need to be, but we certainly have moved the needle. So going back to teacher salaries, this chart just shows where our pay is at the various levels to our peer median. Last year when we did this, of course, we were comparing what we were recommending to the prior year's salary. So this is current year to our peers. The green means that we improved in our position from the prior year. Yellow is we stayed neutral, and red is that we fell a little bit further behind than what we were last time. So I think that's just important to remember. So this is just an estimate for your information. So a 1% raise, it cost $1,128,000, about $603,000. These are estimates for the teacher groups, and then about $525,000. And as a reminder, when we did our estimates previously, we had about 1.3 million at this time available. So 1% costs the district about a little over 1.1 million. So in looking at, this is also repeat information, but I think it's worth going over one more time because as we look at compensation over the next weeks and months, so how can we generate additional budget capacity? First thing is everybody looks at is tighten our belts and reduce our expenditures. So this graph shows you that 85% is already in payroll and benefits. So to make any real headway, that's the segment of this pie chart you have to get to. And with considerable reductions that have been done previously through other legislative sessions, you can see the items that are in contracted services and supplies. These are a lot of fixed costs, particularly in contract services and required utilities, appraisal district, school resources, those type things. So, and a very smaller piece of the budget to make any reductions in. But of course, we'll always try to be efficient and look for something. The second way is to increase enrollment. Increased enrollment brings less recapture for College Station ISD, but it also brings increase in expenditures, so it's not relative. Of course, there's some economies of scale, but it does increase our expenses as well. And then the last method is a voter-approved tax ratification election or a TRE. Those are really the only thing, and I don't say they're not all generating revenue, but generating capacity to do something. So a timeline, so that's bolded, we're at May 17th. I believe we might be looking at an additional workshop, Mr. Martindale.
So I was going to check with the group. We were already tentatively penciling in the 31st for some other work, some contract approval possibly. And I was looking at the time of 4:30 on that day. However, I think this would, if we're coming together for that already on the 31st, might be an excellent time for us to begin to roll up our sleeves and really start doing some heavy lifting in regards to the budget and compensation and where those conversations may lead us or position us for the upcoming months. So I was going to check with the group. I think the 31st is good. My question for the group is, I was originally thinking 4:30, but I'm wondering if 4 is a possibility so that we can get some budget work in here. I don't think the contract stuff will take but a few minutes. I do a reminder that at 5:30 that same day, there's several of you that are meeting with the bond committee. So we will need to be finished, probably 5:15 at the latest. So really the question for the group is 4 p.m. on the 31st an option for a workshop. Okay, Ms. Strauss. And Amy has, she's given you just some foundational numbers. You kind of know where the starting line is now, and then anything we consider what it looks like, and how fund balance is tracking, other ways to generate capacity. So I think we need to come in our work clothes on the 31st and start bearing down on some things and having some conversation about how we manage compensation for 22, 23.
And to clarify my comments earlier, especially Ms. Martindale, I think the fact that we don't have the attrition some of the other higher paying schools have is a testament to the leadership across the administration and the campuses. But pats on the back only go so far, especially in an inflationary environment. So I think I was just trying to frame the challenge that's ahead of us is how do we recognize the teachers and their efforts,
Right.
given the zero-sum game that we
I will, Amy, will you go back a couple of slides to show the 21, 22? Keep going, please. No, there, you passed it.
That one?
I will just tell you that that bothers me. Just going to call it like it is. So I think that's where we need to start our work. Here's the wrestle with that is this information always lags a year back, right? And so when we approved compensation last year, we thought we were picking up 2 or 3 percentage points. In essence, we might have lost a percentage point or just held steady. So we'll have to kind of take that into account as we have these conversations as well, that whatever we do, there's going to be a certain percentage offset because everyone else is doing something as well, if that makes sense.
I like that word instead of revenue, since we're not a for-profit. I like the idea of capacity because it's our ability to recognize and reward people for their performance.
There's more ways than one to get there. So.
Yeah, capacity is great.
And of course, anecdotally, a lot of other school districts are increasing their teacher pay percentages quite a bit, so this upcoming year.
So come ready to work on the 31st at 4 o'clock. Any other questions for Ms. Strauss? Amy, I'd like to thank you, but I'm not sure I'm going to.
I used
No,
to have my
thank you
job,
for.
so. Absolutely.
All right, appreciate it. Brings us to item 3, consideration and discussion related to the 2022-23 healthcare plans and rates. Mr. Martindale.
Good deal. Another item similar to policy EIC local that's been going on for some time here with additional detailed information related to this item is our Chief Administrative Officer, Dr. Molly Perry.
Thank you. All
right, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Horak, Mr. Martindale. Last month, we had the opportunity to really talk through where we were headed with healthcare and health plans for our employees during the 22-23 year, which will officially begin on September 1 in terms of those plans. And so this evening, I'll bring you just an update to that with some more information about our next steps, including employer contributions. So, as a brief reminder, we did go through an RFP process in early spring and ultimately selected TML and TASB Health as our provider for the district beginning in 22-23. TASB Health is a non-profit risk pool governed by the Board of Trustees within the Texas Municipal League, which is a very large pool across the state. And so we feel very confident moving in this direction. As we've shared with you all, the rates and plans that we have established for our employees next year are comparable to what they are experiencing now. And so unlike the last several years, we are very pleased that we'll be able to offer those comparable plans and rates without seeing the increases that we have unfortunately been passed along from TRS. The other good news is this will be very good continuity for our employees with providers. TML is a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, and even those folks on Scott and White will be able to keep their providers because of the wide network available within the plans. Other benefits aside from basic health care like telehealth, employee assistance will be included, and mental and physical wellness components that we received some additional information on today will be even better than what our employees have experienced, along with improved prescription benefits. So last month we saw two charts, and I just want to briefly go over those again as a reminder. There will be 4 different health plan options within the TML system. And so in the light blue, you'll see on the chart the second and fourth column, those are the TASB plans. And in white, you'll see the most comparable TRS plan along with information on the bottom in terms of current enrollment in those plans that we've used for planning and projection purposes. You'll note those first 2 columns with the copay 1500 plan, very low enrollment because that's the plan that's been closed to new enrollees for many years now through TRS. And so it's quite possible that we'll see that increase since the copay 1500 plan, which is a PPO gold standard type plan with TML, will be open to anyone. Then on the right, second half of the 2 columns, we've got the high deductible plan, which is also a PPO. It would be very comparable in terms of those deductibles, but lower out-of-pocket maximums and lower prescription, which you'll see across the board. We've seen a large number of our employees migrate to that high deductible plan over the last several years as a cost savings. While there are only 2 other plans, you'll see a duplication of the TASB 1500 here in the first 2 blue columns because it's both similar to the Active Care Primary Plan as well as the Baylor Scott and White plan. And so we've got comparisons for both of those, along with another HMO plan, the TASB Blue Essentials 2500, which does offer a higher annual deductible, so of course lower rates. Over the last month since we last spoke, we've been really crunching the numbers and spending a lot of time evaluating those employer contributions. You can see in the first of the 3 columns, that's the total monthly premium. That would be if the district was not contributing to the plan at all, which of course we are required to contribute a minimum by state law. We have decided after much contemplation to go ahead and continue a tiered approach to those contributions. And while there is some variance in the amount of contribution, you'll see when we move to the next slide specifically why that is, because our goal in this process was to offset any increase in cost to our employees and ensure that we provide those comparable plan and plan rates, as we have said all along has been a goal for us. And so this is the listing of those 4 different plans that will be available. In the far right column will be the cost to the employee based on which plan they select. So 4 plans, 4 options within each plan. We've got 16 different possible choices for our employees depending on their individualized needs. So how does that compare to what we have in place now? Well, the left and top side of the chart is what you just saw in terms of those 4 TASB TML plans that we are bringing on board. And then we've got a comparison on the right. So we've duplicated the plan for 1500 at the bottom to get that Baylor, Scott, and White comparison. And so what you'll see is in those right 2 columns, the employee cost currently for the comparable plan in 21-22, and then a calculation of the difference between what an employee would be paying now versus what they would be paying next year. So you can see right away if an employee is on that copay 1500 gold standard plan, they're going to see a substantial savings relative to what they are currently paying within TRS Active Care. Again, that's a very small number of employees that are currently on those plans. Then we've got the high deductible plan with basically a net no change if an employee only was to select that same plan, and going further down the 1500 and then the 2500. And so we are very pleased to share with you all that across the board, out of those 16 different possibilities, there are only 2 options that would be an increase over the current plan year. Additionally, if an employee were to elect to move to a different plan, they could certainly realize a savings if they would like to change that level of out-of-pocket max that they are selecting. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about the timeline because we've been moving very quickly over the last week to prepare for the rollout of this process. Typically, our open enrollment does not begin until July, and we would not even know our rates at this point, much less detail regarding the various plans that we have available for our employees. And so we are very glad to be able to share that information will be coming out within the next week. It will include not only detailed information about the 4 plans that we have reviewed this evening, but also the cost. We'll be updating our website, of course, with this information, sending out emails, putting up flyers, posters, having direct conversations with those supervisors of individuals who don't regularly use email as part of their day-to-day work with the district. And then we'll be receiving support from our consultant, Gallagher, who you all met at the last board meeting, along with TML, TASB Health, on really making sure that everyone has all of the information that they need to understand these plans. We'll be doing a comprehensive training with our HR staff so that we become very, very knowledgeable about the plans, as well as hosting orientation meetings for our employees where anybody can come or join in online or watch after the fact at their own time about what exactly is involved in each of the plans, how they can determine information regarding whether their current providers are available within different networks if they're interested in HMO versus PPO. And then ultimately the online open enrollment process should be very smooth because we'll be using the same exact platform that we were using previously with FF Enroll. And we'll actually begin that open enrollment process earlier than we have this summer because we want to just really make sure that everyone understands there will be no carry forward of the existing plan you have. You will have to select a plan in order to have coverage. And so the first period will begin on June 20 through July 25. We're going to try to get as many of our employees enrolled as we possibly can during that time because in order to receive that insurance card in the mail in your hand by September 1, we'll need you to be enrolled by July 25. Now, we are very aware that many of our employees are not on contract yet in July 25. So we have worked with our representatives and our consultant to establish a secondary window of open enrollment so that no one will experience a lapse in coverage. Many of our employees return on August 10th. And so that will give us 3 days to do that very final push of anybody that we haven't been able to connect with to ensure that they will have coverage on September 1, but they would actually have a virtual card available, not a paper card, by the September 1 date. And last but certainly not least, just as a final reminder, these plans will be effective on September 1. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I think it's brilliant, both in identifying this as a cost savings and being able to give that relief in the current environment that we have.
Yes, we were very, very glad. That was a primary goal in this process, was a cost savings. And, overall, in terms of the contributions that we're making, that is coming out exactly the same for the district as a whole. So the district is not realizing savings, but we're glad to pass that along to our employees.
And Mr. Decker, we did it without infusing $700 million worth of federal relief funds to sustain rates. Just,
On the
yes.
record, that would be
I'm
terrorist.
just, it's a good temporary fix.
I mean, no, I think I agree, it's wonderful, and I think it'll be actually interesting to see maybe after the enrollment, how much total money has been saved by our employees. 'Cause there's some big numbers there potentially on some of those plans. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that will bring us to item 4, consideration and discussion related to leadership development in the district's partnership with the Holdsworth Center. Mr. Martindale.
Just an update with our continued work with the Holdsworth Center. We have Mr. Mann, our Director of Instruction and Leadership Development. So Mr. Mann's going to provide us the ongoing work update with Holdsworth Center and CSISD.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My pleasure to come to you tonight to share with you some of the fun things that we've been able to work on this past year, really. So if you recall from previous presentations, I've shared this timeline with you, and you can see there that we've been going through a pretty iterative process with Holdsworth. And so what I'm going to do over the next couple of minutes is just talk through what this process has looked like and how we've engaged different stakeholders as a part of our task force to gather their feedback and input. And then at the end, I'll show you where we are with our leadership definition. So we first met in the late fall, and you can see that we brought together a group of stakeholders from across the district. You can also see that my facial hair is going to change as the photos go along. But we have a variety of people that came into the room. We had teachers, we had administrators, we had librarians, we had stakeholders from different levels. We even had some students as a part of the work. So it was really good. And so we came together with them, and this is really what drove our work, is how do we define leadership in College Station ISD, and what are the leadership expectations of all staff throughout our district? One of the things that I talk about whenever I work with different folks in our leadership development programs is that everyone is a leader. You lead from the role that you're in because you are in front of kids every day, or you're in front of other adults in the building every day. So leadership is not a position, right? It's action. And so that's what we talk about. But what do we want to see in our leadership so that we can help grow our people in that? And so this is a big philosophy of Holdsworth. And so this is what they call their Holdsworth House, and it's built upon the culture of the district. And Holdsworth is very upfront. They will let us know, like, we can't do anything about your district culture. That is you guys. You have to get that straight if this work is going to be where it needs to be, and we're in a very good position with that. But right on top of the district culture is that leadership definition. And so that serves as that basis of everything that we do to grow our people. And so you can see as it goes up, we will use this definition in how we identify our people for leadership roles, how we develop those people to prepare them, how we're going to place them in particular positions that's a good fit for them and a good fit for wherever they're going to be placed, and then how we support them once they get into that position. And so it's this ongoing support that's in the process. And ultimately, the reason for all of this work is to increase our outcomes for all of our students. And so that's kind of the roof of the Holdsworth House. And so we've been going through this, and I shared this visual with you before. It's very busy, but this is one of the driving visuals that they have provided for us. This is HEB's leadership definition. And so they taught us through this process with HEB and with several other corporations and school districts from across the nation to help us kind of see where this work is going. And so in this work, they spelled it out for us and using the principal role as the main area of focus. How does someone progress from a teacher through a teacher leader to assistant principal to principal in our systems? And they helped us to understand the role of the leadership definition in that work and how this is going to help us strengthen and grow our people with where they are. So we took this information and we used a lot of research provided to us by Holdsworth, and we processed this with our task force, and then we put them to work, and we asked them to give us all the different things that they think are important for us to have. Okay, and so competencies. And so we took that, and on that link, and I've shared with in previous transmittals. I mean, there's lots of work that went into this, and lots of input and feedback from them. And we took all that information, we went back to Holdsworth, and then we came out of the 3-day session there with a first draft of categories and competencies. And so right here in front of you is that first iteration of it. We brought it back to the task force. We're in February out at the Transportation Center. And we got their feedback. We got their input, and we said, tell us what you like. Tell us what resonates. Tell us what needs to improve. Tell us what needs to be gone, right? And so this is just an example of some of the edits and changes that came out of working with these folks and taking their input and taking their feedback. And so we had lots of group work, lots of discussion. For those of you that were a part of the strategic design process, it's very similar to that in that there was lots of back and forths and what does this really mean kind of work and conversations, but it was really beneficial. Another task that was provided to us by Holdsworth was we needed to come up with a logo, and so it was very entertaining whenever people started pulling out their napkins and their scratch paper and started writing out different possible logos of what this could look like. And so these are just a couple of examples of the two ideas that were brought forth by the task force for further development and consideration. And they both were utilizing the competencies that have been created by the group. And so I just wanted to share that just to show like this was the first step of the process of a bunch of folks who draw stick figures more than anything else, right? We took this work, we went back to Holdsworth, and so then we started to develop a final draft for feedback. And so as we took this, we came back in March with our task force, and so this was our final meeting with them, and you can see them all assembled here in this room. And so with the final draft, we again gathered more feedback from them. We talked with them about what Holdsworth recommended that we cut and what we replace and the rationale behind it, what do we add, and really developed a full group consensus around this work. And so it was a lot of positive energy that was in the room at the end of our third session together, and we all agreed that we probably could wordsmith this for many more meetings if we really so chose to, but we were to the point where it's time for us to put this work into action and know that we're going to make adjustments in the coming years. I mean, and even HEB had told us that they're in year 7 or 8 of this work, and they've made major adjustments over time. And so that's kind of where we are. We're to a point where we're ready to get it going, and we're very excited about it. And so with the next steps in our work, I want you to open the color folders that should be on the top right corner so that you can see a little bit more clear depiction. But this is currently where we are in our leadership definition. And I'm certainly not going to read these to you, but you've got your copies there for you. And I want to point out that the logo that's on the left side was actually created by graphic design students at our high school level, because as adults, we were kind of in our own way. And you saw the drawings, like they weren't that great. They were okay.
Much better than you guys.
Absolutely. We know well enough if we have a problem, let's go talk to the kids and they can probably help us figure it out. And so they've done a fantastic job with taking the things that we needed in the logo and then put together something that was very reflective of this work. And so we are extremely excited about what we have. And if you're wondering where does this fit in our strategic design, this fits firmly in 1.2. Yeah, right. It fits very firmly in 1.2, and for me, I'm extremely excited about the work we're going to be doing with this and helping craft what people want to do and grow in their professional goals. And this work is going to help us because it's not just about people that have a leadership title. This is going to help people that are aspiring to be a leader in CSISD. Tomorrow morning, we have a planned meeting with our strategic design team out at the Transportation Center. And so we're going to come together, and this is going to be a part of what they're going to do. We're going to lay this out with them so they'll receive copies of what you have in front of you. And we're going to show them, this is what we have currently in our strategic plan that describes leadership. And it's not that it's bad, it's that we have something that's more robust, more defined, more specific. And we're going to get their input and their feedback and see if they are willing as a group to support us replacing the profile of a leader in with the leadership definition so that we can use this to help guide and drive our work with growing our people. And then the next steps after that, and we've kind of been in this process already. We've been working with our campus leaderships and developing their understanding around this. But really and truly, this summer is where the heavy lifting of this work is going to begin. Holdsworth, they helped us understand in our last session with them that if we want to see this work become ingrained, we have to start slow and we have to start with our people that are driving the decisions at the campus every day, and that's our principals and our principal supervisors. And so we really are going to take time to develop their understanding around these competencies and around these descriptors and what does this really look like. And then once we get their understanding throughout the summer and into the early fall, then we're going to begin the work with our assistant principals. Goal setting meetings will include these types of things, and then the work will begin to filter into the different levels of teacher leadership. And so this is going to be, again, an iterative process. We're going to bring the committee, the task force back together periodically, get their input. We're going to have input from administrators. We're going to start to develop some pieces that's going to help us put some things into action, and then we'll adjust as we learn and go through it. And ultimately, if you remember back to the first time I presented with you guys, Holdsworth talks with us about growing that pipeline. And so they use for us the example of the principal. And really, where districts often go wrong is they're not paying attention to the turns in the pipeline. They're not preparing people for their next step. And so that's where we're going to put a lot of our work and our effort, is identifying the right people and then helping prepare them for that position. We all know that college only teach you so much. And so there's certain things that you just have to learn while you're in the job and doing the job. And so we're going to put a lot of job embedded experiences in for our folks and see how they do and then help us grow our people. And this isn't just going to apply to the principalship. We are going to use this in our other levels of leadership. But for the work that we're doing with Holdsworth, we have to start somewhere, and we know the importance of campus administration. And so we're definitely keeping our eye there, but we are expanding this work as much as we can expand it that the system will be able to handle. So it's going to be a few-year process, but it's good. I'm excited about it. So with that, I will see if there are any questions or comments that you'd like to throw out my way.
I have could you go back to the house model?
Yeah.
And your get out free jail card is, I'd have to ask Holdsworth why. The linguist in me will put my taxpayer funded education to.
There we go.
Yeah. Why is equitable co-equal or different than excellent? Because I would argue that equitable is not our goal. We want excellence for all students. Equitable is say that a student that's not engaged and doesn't put in the effort doesn't get a good outcome. And I want our teachers and our leaders to engage those students that aren't engaged so that everyone gets excellent. So is there a difference, and why is excellent and equitable two different words?
Yeah, I think that's a great question to
For
ask
Holdsworth.
them. Yeah, I mean, this is lifted straight off of their stuff. So, but I do understand your point. Yeah, absolutely.
Quick question and comment. Are you guys still going to be meeting with Holdsworth, or are you kind of now, you're on
Yes,
your own?
ma'am. No. We are kind of completed the first semester, so to speak, the first year. We have about 8 months left with them. And so we will pick back up at the end of July. And we will go through, and I believe we have 4 or 5 meetings next year.
Awesome. Okay.
And the work that we're going to be digging in with them next year is under the identification pillar. because we, as a core team of three, Ms. Parkerson, Dr. Perry, and myself, all agree that if we do not identify the right people, the other work is important, but it's not going to help us reach the ultimate goal. And so that's where we're starting.
That sounds fabulous. And by the way, I was looking at the portrait of the leader and portrait of a educator, right? So I love that what you're going to be proposing tomorrow, that you guys just dug into it in more detail,
Right.
you know, to just add and grow this. This is okay if this changes is what I think.
Yeah, our work with Holdsworth as far as attending their sessions and being on campus and that type of thing, I think wraps up around February, March of '23.
I guess for both Mr. Martindale, does the Holdsworth, how many other schools are doing this? Back to the discussion of like versus like, and then does this allow for participants in the program to kind of collaborate with people in other districts, kind of
That's exactly what occurs.
the iron sharpens?
So I think there's a dozen to 13 in the
14.
leadership, 14 in the leadership collaborative with the three of them. In the superintendent's collaborative that I'm a part of, there's a dozen of us. Some of those districts overlap, some do not. I know in the leadership collaborative group with Jeff and Tiffany and Molly, folks such as Eanes, Corpus Christi, Tomball, those are just folks off the top of my head. Of course, there's Temple
Yes.
with myself, Klein, Conroe, Lamar Consolidated. Those are just some of examples. So there's one or two that are the same. If the superintendent of that particular district is in the superintendent collaborative, then they do not participate in the leadership collaborative. If the superintendent's not in that, they're part of the collaborative team.
And I really like, and I like to trademark the phrase the Barkley paradox, because you're a role model whether you want to be or not. I think for non-student facing, I think people need, that's great for the organization to realize that you are affecting beyond just your organization, your immediate organization.
Yeah, I agree.
Remind me, you guys had to apply for this?
Correct. We did. And we feel that a reason that we were able to get in this year, we had a lot of the components together. We just needed someone that's done this work because they've been doing this with other districts they have a 5-year program. And I feel that they saw we are there.
Right.
And so we were excited that they saw what we were trying to get done.
Yeah, what we're doing, the 18-month is new. They previously, and they still run a 5-year collaborative.
And they remind us, like, we're doing things in 18 months that they have done over 4 and 5 years.
Wow.
As someone who teaches ethical leadership courses, I want to commend you guys for what you're doing because it's hard, right? And a little bit of what you're talking about, Blaine, I think is part of that making it equitable is actually, there's a million ways to do leadership, right? I mean, there's a million different books. There's no one way to do it, but I think if you guys make it tangible like you're doing and you set your parameters and you set your definitions and you can, a lot of people call it soft skills. To me, it's hard skills. I can make you an accountant, an engineer, a teacher, but it's much harder to make you an effective leader and ethical one at that. The one thing that I hope is happening for that pipeline that you guys are looking for is identifying those who don't identify themselves.
Yes.
Because I think we have a lot of teachers who do not beat their chests, that don't necessarily stand out for different reasons, but are excellent at what they do and have tremendous potential, maybe just don't identify it themselves. So I hope that's happening.
Yes, it is. You are correct. We have those conversations
Yeah,
frequently.
we discussed that, Darren, that there are a number that simply don't recognize themselves accordingly. And so I think that's part of our responsibility. And Jeff's done a wonderful job leading up our different leadership components. And I know something that he's working on is making sure that visiting with principals too, to identify those people that maybe don't perceive themselves in that manner, that are high potential.
Yeah, and I hope they're peers too, because as they work together, those are who see it day to day,
Yes.
when sometimes you don't interact with your principal nearly as much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mann.
You bet.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And that will adjourn us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I do. All right, we'd like to welcome y'all to our board meeting here, May 17th, 2022. Declaration of a quorum, 7 members present. Welcome to the meeting, this meeting of the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees. We were elected at large to represent the interests of our community and our state in educating our students. Our mission for our students in this district is success each life, each day, each hour. We adhere to all pertinent laws, policies, and procedures in posting agendas and conducting our meetings. The detailed agenda information was made available to us at least 72 hours in advance, and we all have come to this meeting informed and prepared. We've just completed a workshop meeting where we heard reports and discussed much of the information needed to make decisions in either this meeting or in upcoming meetings. This is a meeting of the 7 trustees in a public setting rather than a public meeting. As such, public comment is included on the agenda at a specific time and requires us to listen rather than take action so as to abide by the Open Meetings Act. We are pleased that you have taken the time this evening to join us. We are very proud of this school district. We thank you for your interest in and support of our students. That brings us to item C, Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. This evening, we have students from Oakwood Intermediate and A&M Consolidated Middle School to lead us in our pledges and moment of silence. So I ask that those respective principals come forward with their students, Mr. Espedia, and there's Mr. Samak. I couldn't find his head. Mr. Samak, if you will come forward also. Well, welcome, Mr. Samak. How are you? Very good.
All right. Good evening, good evening. I am very excited to have 2 fantastic Wildcats with me here this evening. To my left is Maura Rushing, a 5th grader, and to my left is a 6th grader, Annabelle Robinson. I am going to let them introduce themselves. They are fantastic Wildcats, and you're going to get to hear that from them right now.
Hi, my name is Maura Rushing. I'm a 5th grade student at Oakwood. I enjoy gymnastics, volleyball, and spending time with my friends and family. My favorite subject is art with Mrs. Stone.
Hello, I'm Annabelle Robinson. I'm a 6th grader at Oakwood Intermediate. I enjoy swimming. I work in the library as a library aide. My favorite subject is social studies, and I enjoy swimming in my free time.
Good evening. My name is Omar Spezia. I'm the principal at A&M Consolidated Middle School, and it's my pleasure tonight to bring Atsiri Sotelo, who is an 8th grade Bobcat, all the way from Bobcat Country. I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Atsiri Sotelo. I'm an 8th grader at A&M Consolidated Middle School. I like to play soccer. I'm usually a goalkeeper. And then favorite color is purple. And my favorite subject would probably be science with Miss Cashel.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in the Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
And now for a moment of silence. Now y'all may be seated.
Good job, guys. Thank you. Stay right there, Mr. Horak. You're not quite done. C2 student recognitions. We have a number of student recognitions this evening. Students, when Mr. Glenwinkle calls your name, if you will, come up to your right, meet me over there for your certificate, and if you will, shake hands with all the board members. Once we take care of everyone from each particular group, then we'll pause for pictures at that time as well. So, Mr. Glenwinkle.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. Mr. Horak, members of the board, it's my pleasure to be here again to recognize some outstanding student accomplishments in College Station ISD. Just to like to point out that this has been a record-setting year for our CTE programs and the co-curricular activities that they participate in. And these two groups of students are just another fine example of that. The A&M Consolidated Veterinary Science Team recently won the state FFA championship and will represent Texas at the national contest. In FFA contests, there are no classifications like there are in UIL. Regardless of school size, every team in the state competes against each other. The national championship will be held in conjunction with the 95th National FFA Convention and Expo on October 26th through 29th in Indianapolis. These contests, known as career development events, build on what is learned in agricultural classes and encourage members to put their knowledge into practice. More than 18,588 students begin the statewide tournament in 29 different events, which reflect classroom instruction in basic technical, leadership, interpersonal, and teamwork skills. As I call your name, state champion veterinary science team members, please come forward to receive your certificate and be recognized. Abigail Komenchek. Leslie Munoz. Not only is this a team competition, but individuals are recognized for placing at certain levels. And the 14th high point individual, along with being a team state champion, Megan Downey. And having the best score in the state of Texas, the high point individual is Mr. Luke Sanders. This team is coached by A&M Consolidated High School Career and Technical Education teacher, Hannah Lewandowski. So our next group of students, I'm going to read a little something here about their accomplishment. A pair of CSISD business students won the national championship in their respective events recently at the 2022 National Business Professionals of America Leadership Conference in Dallas. In addition to the national champions, several other students from College Station High School and A&M Consolidated High School placed in the top 4 in their respective events and open events offered at the contest. Students must compete and advance through multiple levels of competition to qualify for nationals and contests which test the skills learned through business education courses. So as I call your name, please come forward. The national champion in business law and ethics, and also a 4th place finisher with the economic research team, Gideon Ong. The national champion in Java programming, Will Wang. Third place in advanced spreadsheet applications, Ariba Momin. Fourth place with the economic research team, Forrest Liu. And also fourth place with the economic research team, Abigail Wilson. The teachers that make all this possible for these students are BPA advisors from the 2 high schools, Shanika Brooks. Terry Casto. Dawson Deere. Kathy Fisher. Dennis Rhodes. How about one more round of applause for this fantastic group of students and educators? Mr. Martindale, this concludes our recognitions for the evening.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item C3. We'd like to recognize the artwork there at the back of our boardroom from the kiddos at Oakwood Intermediate and A&M Consolidated Middle School. So make sure you take a look at that and see all the artistes we have here in CSISD doing a fantastic job. That'll bring us to item D1, board reports and superintendent update. Any board reports? Anyone want to start?
DIC met May 11th, last Wednesday. We, the committee approved, or council approved the 2022-23 DIP goals, which are on H3 consent agenda. And then we will again meet June 8th to discuss ESSA funding. So while the rest of the committees are off, DIC will be at it.
Well, I can, many of you already know we had a wonderful Education Foundation event last night with the scholarship award ceremony. I know many of us were there to celebrate 115 seniors getting scholarships of over $154,000 from Education Foundation. And as always, they, the folks that Teresa and her team put together just a wonderful evening for everybody. It was really nice to recognize obviously both the students, but also all the donors, you know, that have made the scholarships possible. And then one other bit of news from Education Foundation is that this year they hit a big milestone with the foundation. This was the first year that they brought in over $1 million in 1 year through their hard work. I mean, that is just amazing. Some of that is set aside for future scholarships and endowments, but over 3/4 of that went back to the district, back to our students and back to our teachers. So again, just so much kudos to what that organization has done, you know, over the past 2 decades. Thank you, Teresa. That's a big one. You may be talking about it, Mr. Martindale, but the other thing is that the Strategic Design Committee is going to be pulled back together tomorrow for a kind of a review of what's been going on behind the scenes over the last year and talk about the progress and work towards the goals and then kind of what are the next steps. So I'm looking forward to that. I know some of us will be there for that as well. That's it.
Were you going to talk about the bond committee?
I can, but.
Well, I was just going to say the bond committee is going to reconvene later this month to consider the Proposition D bond that did not pass this past fall, and that'll be coming up at the end of the month.
I can do PAC. We discussed the income tax withholdings, which is back on track, thank goodness. Compensation regarding covering classes and extra duty pay was discussed. Purchasing order turnaround time, just because the money is there, we still have to make sure the purchases are appropriate. So I know sometimes it takes longer than people like. Elementary grading guidelines are working through it with collaboration. Engage your campus if you're interested. Reporting ethics concerns, the employee handbook is your first resource. And as we touched on at workshop, worth commenting on and more we'll get into tonight. But the TASB salary study, so looking at comparison districts, making sure they're comparable multiple ways, geography, challenges, openings, etc. How are other districts giving raises? Their fiscal year ends at different times. There's tax ratification elections, which requires voter approval, federal relief funds, which were discussed, reduction of positions or not filling new vacancies, students to staff ratios, all that factors in. And with that, I just want to comment that having spent 7 months on the board and seeing what everybody has been through the last 2 years, I want to commend our teachers and staff. Well, everyone has been impacted, not just those in education. Our school district has made decisions in the best interest of the students. Coming out of the pandemic, teen depression, anxiety, and suicide rates across the country are higher than they've ever been. Fortunately, last fall, we chose to open our schools to in-person learning, giving our children the normalcy they needed and the opportunity to see and interact with teachers and friends. Given all that teachers and staff have been through, there are two things they need more. Two things that they need: more time and more pay. While I can't control their time and additional classroom responsibilities, I can advocate for their pay. We are lagging behind our peer school districts, in particular the 5 to 10 year mark, which is nearly 10% behind our peer districts. This is when we often lose good teachers to other districts or other industries. While everyone is impacted by rising inflation, not just educators, it feels like a pertinent time to do all we can to take care of teachers and staff and find a way to increase their salaries.
Any others? Mr. Martindale.
All right, thank you. And to follow Dr. Payne, we have a budget workshop to start digging down into the compensation piece. Again, mark your calendars, board, March 31st, 4 p.m. So I couldn't agree with you more. And our work as a team of 8 begins at 4 o'clock on Tuesday the 31st. Other items of note: Southwood Valley, phase 1 of their 2 large renovations begin as soon as the kids exit next Thursday. I think I'm looking for Mr. Hall. He may already be at Southwood Valley waiting to start. There he is. But that'll take place. There are 2 phases, and it will occur over 2 summers. So they are ready and positioned to get that going as soon as school ends over at Southwood Valley and the renovations of the elevation and the interior. We're also going to be doing, I believe, 4 different restroom pod renovations at Consol. Of course, Consol is the most comprehensive of the renovations and will likely take 3 to 4 summers, but we'll get started with quite a few of the restroom renovations there as soon as we hit June. Also, we've had several planning meetings, a couple, regarding phase 1 of the CTE Center, the Ag Center. So we're tracking accordingly on that and hope to be moving some dirt around on that item late fall. Another item that if we don't make the 31st of May, we'll make the June. We'll be approaching the board to approve the purchase of the CTE canopies that were a part of the bond, November 21 bond as well. So some of that work will initiate through the course of summer as well. That's to expand the covered working area out the back of both high schools for our CTE programs that are growing significantly. As Mr. Mann mentioned, the bond committee that did the work and brought together the 4 different propositions for voter consideration November of 21's reconvening. They're reconvening toward the end of the month as well on the 31st. And we're going to have some good hearty conversation about Proposition D that failed that has to do with renovations and additions to Tiger Field House, as well as the press box and sound systems at Tiger and Cougar Field. So we're going to review those, have some conversations, review some polling data, and it's very likely that come the June board meeting, administration will be asking the board for, or coming with a particular recommendation associated with Proposition D in consideration of possibly in November of this year to voters again. We'll see how that conversation goes on the 31st. Again, kudos to Ms. Benden. That was a wonderful ceremony last night. I know Ms. McAdams has already touched on that, but thank you and your team for your tireless efforts and the wonderful job that all of you do. I will mention to the board, and everyone's invited, Thursday, 6 o'clock. This Thursday, Grace Bible Church Southwood Campus, right across from Consoli's, our employee awards, starts at 6 p.m. So you may want to be there a few minutes early. I didn't say Mr. Ben. I just happened to be looking this way. 5:45-ish, and we'll meet down the front toward this. 5:30 it is, toward the sanctuary, and we'll start promptly at 6 p.m. Also, board members, let me mention this to you, and we'll be adding some additional information in the transmittal. Graduations next week, full slate of graduations. College View High School next Thursday at Rudder Auditorium. We'll be getting in touch with you as far as information for parking passes. That ceremony starts at 7 p.m. I would recommend your arrival by 6:30. Ms. Horn will have the appropriate robes there for all of us for that particular graduation. You'll take your robe with you afterwards. On Friday, we have College Station High School and A&M Consolidated High School at 4 p.m. and 7:30 at Reed Arena, respectfully. Now, something's a little bit different this year. In the past, we were typically the only two ceremonies at Reed Arena on that first day. I believe Tomball is there before us on Friday. So I tell you that, and that you may plan ahead also because you're going to be encountering the previous ceremony exiting as we're getting in for College Station High School. We experienced that between the 4 and 7:30, but we typically haven't had to deal with it going into the 4 o'clock ceremony. So please plan accordingly for that item also. Student celebrations, we saw a couple here earlier this evening. The veterinary science team, congratulations to those students from A&M Consolidated, as well as our 2 national champions in BPA that we recognized earlier. We did have 3 of our student athletes, girls medal at the state track meet in Austin, and we have some continued baseball playoffs on Thursday night. Cougar baseball will be playing Brenham in game 1 on Thursday. We do have Strategic Plan Committee reconvening tomorrow at 8:30 at Transportation Center. We will be taking a look and reviewing the work on the identified specific results this year, and also be looking and projecting forward as to what specific results we may bring aboard for a year 2 work. So with that, Mr. Horak, that completes the superintendent's update.
All right. That will bring us to item E, hearing of citizens. During this time, public comments are welcome. The Open Meetings Act prevents us from responding to speakers regarding items not on the agenda. Comments related to items on the agenda may be discussed during deliberations on that specific agenda item. Please complete the note card and give it to the executive assistant. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Those needing an interpreter may have up to 6 minutes. Each person has 1 opportunity at the microphone regardless of minutes used. Unused minutes may not be accrued by another speaker. The executive assistant will time the comments and alert the president when time has expired. The board asks that those addressing the board refrain from any derogatory comments. Do we have any other cards, Ms. Horn? Okay, I do have 1 card here. We'd like to welcome Misty Carter, please.
Good evening. I'm Misty Carter. I spoke to the board earlier this evening during the workshop regarding the new proposal for the GPA policy changes. At that time, I urged the board to ensure the revisions that were suggested by myself and other parents and interested parties were included in the proposed plan that Tiffany Parkerson presented. I'm so pleased to report that Mrs. Parkerson did in fact include those revisions. Again, I appreciate her time and effort in listening to our concerns about our current 7th graders and the students that will follow. I also want to thank Chrissy Hester and board member Kimberly McAdams for talking with me about my concerns directly. Earlier today, I attended the AMCMS PTO meeting, as I do every month, and many of our members were aware of these changes that were going to affect for our 7th graders. A concern that we discussed following the meeting was, what about Tier 1 AP courses? What will our 7th graders have available? And so to that point, I just wanted to reiterate a suggestion I made, or a point I made in the earlier meeting, was that the number of AP courses available to our current 7th graders will vary based upon the paths they're currently on. So some 7th graders will begin taking Tier 1 AP 6.0 courses much sooner than other 7th graders based on the choices that parents have made under our current system. And those students will have more Tier 1 AP opportunities to choose from when we're calculating the new weighted GPA. For instance, a student who is currently in Algebra 1 as a 7th grader, which is a Tier 2 5.5 class, will take Geometry, a Tier 2 5.5 class, in 8th grade. Those students will then take Algebra 2 as 9th graders, which is a Tier 2 5.5 class, and Pre-Cal as a 10th grader, also Tier 2 5.5. Those students are then eligible to take up to 3, maybe more, of the AP 6.0 Tier 1 courses in math topics. Most of those students that aren't on this fast math track will be unable to take those Tier 1 AP 6.0 courses until they're juniors, maybe not even until they're seniors. And of course, not by the time they calculate GPA for the college application process at the end of the junior year. Similarly, in the language courses, students who are in dual language would be in Spanish 2 as 7th graders, 3 as 8th graders, and start Spanish 4 AP, the Tier 1 course, as 9th graders. And that's something that we just need to consider and educate our parents on. Under the proposal, parents need to be informed that their elections, such as enrolling in dual language in kindergarten or taking accelerated math path, which usually begins in 5th grade, will affect the timing and number of these Tier 1 AP courses that are available in high school. In talking with Mrs. Parkerson, my understanding is they're already thinking about those offerings for AP Tier 1 courses, which I appreciate. I encourage this expansion, and I also encourage more robust communication with parents about the policy and how decisions made early in a student's education could impact their ability to enroll in AP Tier 1 6.0 courses. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That will bring us to item F, consent agenda. Those items are item G, item H3, H4, J3, J4, J5, J6, J7, J8, K1, and K2.
Move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
That was neat. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Ben. We have a second by Mr. Payne, Dr. Payne. Any other discussion? Any? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. That will bring us to item H1, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to board policy EIC local regarding academic achievement and class rank. Mr. Martindale.
For a repeat appearance, we have our Executive Director of Secondary Education, Ms. Tiffany Parkerson.
Good evening, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Horak, and members of the board. I have a quick refresher on the main points that are being recommended as revisions by the committee before we take a moment to ask you to take some potential action on these revisions. So we know that multiple means of representation is the best way to learn, so I'm at least bringing you a presentation that looks different than what I showed you earlier and throughout the process. This is actually part of the parent communication chart. So there are three main categories in which the recommended revisions are within the policy. One of those is within the weighted grading system, and the committee is recommending that we move from a two-tiered weighting system to a three-tiered system. Tier 1 courses would be advanced placement courses, Tier 2 locally designated advanced courses, and eligible academic dual credit courses, and Tier 3 would be all other eligible courses. Those would be at 6.0, 5.5, and 5.0 weighted grading tiers as well. The second category is in regards to the calculation piece, or the courses that we would include in the grade point average for class rank, which, remember, is the whole purpose of this policy is to establish those parameters. So the committee recommends that the student's GPA used for class rank would include the 8 highest semesters from each of the 4 core subject areas. So that would be English, math, social studies, and science, and the 2 highest semesters of languages other than English. In addition to courses taken during the school year in CSISD, grades in those categories that are listed, such as summer school, credit by exam, correspondence, and distance learning, would also be eligible to be included for Tier 3 if they fall under those realms of 4 core and languages other than English. The third area is local graduation honors. In this area, the committee recommends that we apply our previous GPA cut points for local graduation honors to our new Tier 3 three-tiered system. So that would have our summa cum laude graduates be those earning a 5.0 or above, our magna cum laude graduates 4.8 to 4.99, and our cum laude graduates 4.79. Additionally, I'd like to remind you all that there are some additions that our TASB policy consultant has asked us to add regarding the highest ranking graduate and ranking TAS language. And this is in both our current policy for current high school students and then in the revised policy as well. And with that being said, we, as the administration, would recommend that the board adopt the committee's revisions to policy EIC local as presented. Also of note to those in the audience, the full policy is linked in the board agenda, should you like to do a little light reading on that.
Any questions for Ms. Parkinson?
No questions. Can I move that we adopt the policy EIC local changes as presented?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. McAdams. We have a second by Ms. Nolan. Any other discussion? Any questions? All in favor?
I do want to discuss,
Go right
or
ahead.
not really just comment. I mean, again, I've said many times the thank yous to everybody who participated in this over the 9-month period. It was a lot of hard work, but again, I think it was so important that we did this. I think our system is going to be more fair, which was it's very important. I think it also is going to do what a GPA system needs to do, which is to recognize academic success and the rigor when we have it. I also think the new thing, the really good things it's going to do is it's going to support, some of the values that we've laid out, in our strategic design plan, really giving our students some more freedom and opportunity to really explore areas of their interest. And I mean, that is the hope of me, and I really believe a lot of the committee behind that. So I really hope that happens. It's all that said, I think there's so much good. We all know it's a huge change. We've been under the old system for so long. Yes, there will be some growing pains and some adaptation. There will be more learning along the way. But I think, I think it's a wonderful thing that we are doing for our district. And I, again, wholeheartedly support the efforts and the changes.
I can echo what Ms. McAdams said. This is long overdue and benefits our students. So I know it was a lot of, we kept starting at step 3 and then 1. Seemed like every presentation, then 2 and then 4.
Not all of us need to go in order.
Right, yeah, so thank you for a year's worth of work to get this done, because this benefits our students, and it's long overdue because it was such a big job to tackle. So I commend everybody for being a part of that.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep saying the same things. Thank you for all the work. And personally, I mean, I was kind of a slow adopter on this. So I appreciate all of the explanations and the conversations and just the thought that went into this from the committee. So thank you. And also I wish that all of my kids could have been in on this. I do think that this is going to be very beneficial for our students in our district. So I do. No, I'm not having any more kids. No, I'm done. But thank you again for your work. To you and the entire committee. No.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Parkerson.
Thank you.
That will bring us to item H2, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the adoption of instructional materials for health and physical education. Mr. Martindale.
Here with additional information on this agenda item is our Director of Instruction and Leadership Development, Mr. Jeff Mann.
All right, good evening, Board of Trustees. I appreciate the time to come to you this evening to follow up on our information that I shared with you last month regarding Proclamation 2022. So tonight, your responsibility as the board is set forth by House Bill 1525 is to ensure that as a district we have followed the processes and we've made sure that we've taken into consideration the law and done everything that we're supposed to do. And so I'm going to go over that timeline with you, and then at the end, if you guys are prepared to make a vote, then you can have your have that vote at the end. Okay. So as far as the timeline goes, January 12th of this year, the board authorized the SHAC to be a part of the adoption process, and so then the SHAC officially became a part of that process as required. And on February 28th, the SHAC reviewed the work of the subcommittee that was formed to review over the instructional materials for human sexuality instruction. And then on March 7th, we held 2 public meetings where the public was invited to come and review and provide input regarding the instructional materials. And then on March 23rd, the SHAC reconvened and they developed their recommendation that was presented to you guys in the April board meeting. And you received that recommendation on April 19th from the SHAC. And then on that Friday, April 22nd, I shared via transmittal the link and information for you guys to be able to access the materials for yourself to look through as you so chose. And it brings us into this evening just to make sure that you guys understand where we are as a district with the current policy in place. We currently follow the first 4 items that are listed on there. And we do not utilize item number 5 because currently we do not have curriculum that includes contraception and condoms use in human reality rates. And so we do not teach it in our practice. If you recall, these are the items that I shared with you last month that we are recommending for adoption. And the last 2 items that are there under health for middle school and high school, the Goodhart Wilcox materials do include an option for those materials if the board so chooses to vote for us to adopt those materials. And the SHAC recommendation was for the board to adopt the materials that are a part of the human sexuality instruction. This is a reminder that parents opt in to any of these topics, regardless of number 5. And there are several different TEKs that are related to human sexuality instruction. And so we will ensure that the opt-in process is in place, regardless of what the board vote is this evening. And as far as the administration recommendation for you this evening, we wanted you to know that we took the input and feedback from our teachers that were involved in the process, community members that came and spoke, the SHAC membership. We had a thorough review of the State Board of Education recommended health and PE materials. And we also know that we have a requirement to make sure that parents are able to opt in to any of these topics that are taught in our middle school and high school health classes. And so with that, our administrative recommendation for the board is for you to adopt the instructional materials for health and human physical education as presented. So I'm going to turn it over to you for you guys to have your discussion.
I move to adopt the recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Decker. We have a second by Dr. Payne. Any discussion?
So I have a quick question. And I know we talked about it last month, but I just want to make sure I'm remembering this correctly. So with the opt-in, parents are like we got access to the materials. Parents are given access to that material to be able to see it, yes?
Parents
Before they
are
choose?
what we provide to parents is a part of is an outline of these are the topics, these are the things that we teach. It's not the access to now their child, if they're enrolled in the course, they can see what's in the materials if they choose. Like
Okay.
they can use their child's login information. But what we will provide to them at a minimum of 2 weeks before we even teach any items that fall under this is the notice of this is what we're going to teach, this is what we're going to cover, this is when we're going to do it, and then they have to explicitly sign giving permission for us to do that with their child.
Okay. I personally really liked being able to go through it because, I mean, I read through it, quite a bit of it, and as a parent, it will help me have discussions with my kiddo. So I really liked having access to it. So for those that, other parents out there that are wrestling with this. That's all. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Mann.
All right.
That will bring us to item I, personnel. I1, consider approval of new administrator contracts as recommended by the superintendent of schools. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. We have 5 administrative contracts being recommended this evening. Since there are 5, I'm going to stick to the script as much as possible. Y'all know how well I do that, though. So we want to begin with Dr. Stormy Hickman. The recommendation is for Dr. Hickman to be named Executive Director of Elementary Education. I should make her stand during this whole time. Dr. Hickman, where are you? Please stand. Thank you. For the last 3 years, Dr. Hickman has served as the district's Director of Talent Management in the Human Resources Department. Previously, she was principal at Spring Creek Elementary School from 2015 to 2019. Dr. Hickman has also served in administrative roles with stints as assistant principal at both A&M Consolidated High School and Greens Prairie Elementary School. Dr. Hickman, you have any guests? Just want to make sure. Just your fam, right? Okay. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Hickman. Mr. Horak, for the record.
Are we not doing the 3-minute speeches?
No, that's only for those that we're hiring from outside
the district, that's right.
Everybody else
Okay.
has done it. So Mr. Starnes will have to do this. Did Ms. Parkerson tell you you had to do that? Oh, he's going to fit in well here, obviously. Okay, and next, and we'll go through all these and handle it with one action. Yes. Next, Director of Athletics, Kevin Starnes. For the last 2 years, Kevin has served as Director of Athletics in Grapevine-Colleyville ISD. Prior to his work in athletic administration, Kevin served 3 years as an assistant principal and 3 years as associate at Colleyville Heritage High School. He's also served stints coaching basketball, cross country, football, golf, tennis, and track at Royal High School, Kempner High School, Alvarado High School, and Grapevine High School. Mr. Kevin Starnes. And now, Kevin, I know you do have guests, so you don't. You better make sure and introduce your family, or me and you both will be in trouble.
My wife Kayla, she's hopefully coming on in the district as well. She's a teacher, and then my 2 daughters, Kirby, she's currently in 4th grade, and then KJ is currently in 3rd grade.
Very good. We're excited to have you guys. So every principal in here, when you mentioned your wife's a teacher, looked right at her. So just understand that. Yeah, there she is, guys. Hey, Kevin, we're very glad to have you guys joining our family. All righty. Josh Simak. Where's Mr. Simak? There he is. All righty. Director of Human Resources. Mr. Simak has been the principal of Oakwood Intermediate School for the past 6 years. Prior to that, he was campus assistant 7 years, excuse me, 6 2/3, 3/4, I don't know. Okay. Prior to that, he was campus assistant principal at Pebble Creek Elementary and College Station Middle School. Before these administrative roles, Mr. Simak served as teacher and coach both in College Station and Port Lavaca ISDs. Mr. Josh Simak.
Oh, that ain't right.
Mr. Simak, stand back up. introduce your wife. We know her, but you need to do introductions. Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Simak. All righty. And next we have Riverbend Elementary, Miss Heather Sherman. Heather is currently the assistant principal at Riverbend, where she's held that post since 2019 when the campus opened. Prior to becoming the assistant principal at Riverbend, Heather served in the same role at Southwood Valley Elementary from 2014 to 18. Before entering campus administration, she taught both in Hearn and Navasota ISDs and has experience as a literacy specialist and instructional coach. Ms. Heather Sherman for position of principal at Riverbend Elementary. And introductions? Absolutely.
My son Noah, who's an 11th grader at College Station High School, and my other son Ethan, who is a 7th grader at Upper Middle School.
Very good. Thank you, Heather. And we have Miss Ashley Stevens, Assistant Principal, A&M Consolidated Middle School. Ashley currently serves as a literacy instructional specialist for for grades K through 5 in Spring Branch ISD. She also hosts teaching experience in Aldine ISD, where she also served as a teacher leader and facilitated professional development at the district level. Ms. Ashley Stevens. And Ashley, you have someone with you as well. Is he a teacher? Oh, okay. Mr. Horak, those are my recommendations for the respective positions. Very excited about these folks taking on new roles and joining our school district. Tremendous confidence in their leadership ability.
I move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Hall, second by Mr. Ben. Any discussion? No? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Congratulations. That will bring us to item J. J1, consider approval for the purchase of student devices from Avanex through DIR Co-op contract number DIR TSO 4159 in the amount of $324,870 utilizing 2021 bond funds. Mr. Martindale.
With specifics related to this particular purchase, and item J1 is our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Amy Droz.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Horak, and members of the board. So tonight, we'll bring forth information regarding student devices that will be purchased with Proposition B of the bond that was approved back in November. That proposition was about a little over $4.5 million. And would be used for personal devices, including student devices. So the technology department did some research to determine what device would be best for our students, trying to balance educational needs, functional use, as well as durability. So they made that selection, put it out for proposal or quotes, and received 2 viable quotes. I will mention this is the second purchase related to these student devices. There was 2,000 units purchased in January or authorized in January by you as trustees. So they was 714 devices, with Avanex being recommended as the best value to the district and the low proposer in the amount of $324,870. So with that, I'll entertain any questions or ask for a recommendation for the approval of 714 laptops from Avanex in the amount of $324,870 using 2021 bond funds.
A motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Dr. Payne, second by Ms. Nolan. Any other discussions or questions? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Think you're staying up there?
I'm going to stay.
Okay. Brings us to item J2. Consider approval of the purchase of hardware and software for the expansion of the navigation and student accountability system from Safe Fleet using the TASB Purchasing Co-op contract number 604-20 in the amount of $67,700, utilizing ESSER 1 funds. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. With additional details for item J2 and the purchase of this software and hardware student accountability system, we have our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Amy Dross, and our Director of Transportation, Mr. Hector Silva.
Thank you. So I'll kind of introduce the process and then turn it over to Mr. Silva as he did most of the heavy work in this particular process. But our transportation department has a GPS or a tracking system that's utilized internally. They've been testing it in the way of student accountability. But in order to use that K through 12 for increased safety and other purposes, we did need it on 50 additional buses as well as additional licenses. So we were able to earmark some remaining ESSER 1 funds that we could utilize for this project. So not totally a one-time, but really all we have is the maintenance and licenses that continue beyond 1 year from now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Silva, and he can kind of describe the system to you.
Thank you, Ms. Amby. Hello, board. So in essence, what we are talking about is what some vendors and some districts use as tracking. We prefer to use the word accountability because this way we're going to be looking at basically on the spot, real time, when a student boards the bus, when a student disembarks, where they disembark, and then the parents will also have an app that they can download based on the student's ID number. And then they will get the notices that their children have either entered the bus or exited the bus. This is a system that in my 32 years in this vocation, finally school transportation is coming into the 21st century. I mean, I digress, but when I started as a bus driver, you were handed the keys and you were told, pick up Mike on Elm Street and he'll tell you where to go. And so this is really going to make our life a lot easier. It'll account, obviously, and it'll be a lot safer for our small children, especially at the beginning of the year when if a parent's not there, the software will let us know that that child should not be released on their own. On the latter years, the secondaries, we have issues with sometimes the kids not getting off where they need to be or where they should be. And so this will also alert the bus driver that that child should not get off at that stop. In essence, the system integrates completely with other modules in our system, such as routing, which will help our drivers, like I said, with the navigation aspect. So hopefully we're very close to the days where the bus driver, especially a sub-driver, will not be reading left, right directions and driving at the same time, which we've done forever. We'll have a GPS system that will tell the driver which way to go, just like in the real world, like we do with our phones. So in essence, that is the information. If I miss something, I'm here to answer any questions.
So having had a kid get on the wrong bus one day, I really love this. And you guys took excellent care of her and me, so thank you. But I really like this. So I move to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Nolan, a second by Ms. Hall. Could y'all let me know next time?
Yeah, you're welcome.
Y'all can hold on.
I'll comment then.
This is a
Mr. Oz, didn't you say the badges for the system would also help with food services?
Yes, so our plan, at least at elementary school, is to utilize the badges that the elementary students have that ride the bus. She would also get a card reader so that they can scan in for their breakfast in the morning. More importantly for breakfast. Lunches, the children come in within class sets, so it's a little bit easier. They can pull the class roster. But in the morning, they come in at all times. And so it's going to be used by food service as well. Same cards.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Nolan, second by Mr. Hall. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
That will bring us to item L, executive session. L1, the board will meet in executive session to conduct a closed meeting to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property because the deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the district in negotiations with a third party. Executive session deliberations will be held pursuant to the deliberation regarding real property closed meeting exception to the Texas Open Meetings Act as set forth in section 551.0742, the Texas Government Code. We'll see y'all back shortly. Hope y'all are all here.